In my story, I experienced a marriage filled with betrayal and revenge. I thought I married for love, only to find out I married for money. My husband Dave, a gentle, considerate, and generous man, but his appearance was not what I had dreamed of. As time went on, I realized a marriage without love could not succeed, and my loneliness drove me into an affair. However, when I thought I had found my true soulmate in Tom, I decided to end my marriage, but Dave's revenge plan plunged me into even deeper trouble. Let's formally listen to today's story of infidelity. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for your support. I do not love you anymore and I want a divorce. He smirked. His revenge had started. Men are scum. I never imagined my husband would ruin life after I told him I didn't love him anymore and wanted a divorce. Hey, read it for the sake of privacy. I will use a fictitious name for my husband, Dave. He is 35 years old and I am 30. We have been married for 3 years. My marriage today is loveless. I can't recall any day I was actually happy during the course of our marriage. I lost everything due to my stupidity. I'm not sure what came over that I began cheating on my husband. I expected my husband to fall to his knees and beg me. I told him I no longer loved him and threatened to divorce him. Instead of begging, he decided to divorce me. I never imagined that the man I married 3 years ago would be capable of such a dubious act. Truth be told, I married Dave for his money. I met Dave through an old friend of mine. Dave fell in love at first sight, but I didn't. I never wanted to marry Dave because I didn't love him, but my parents assured me that marriage was about more than just love. They said I'd grow to love Dave over time, but that never happened. Dave is a gentle, caring and kind-hearted man. Physically, he is not my spec. He is short and bald, but he is an extremely generous man. His generosity is what led me to marry him. Dave and I were only dating for 4 months. After our marriage, I realized that my parents had lied to me and that love was a necessary component for any marriage to succeed. Dave is a nice man, without a doubt, but I was never attracted to him, so anything he does irritates me. The more he attempted to make me happy, the more I distanced myself from him. Dave ensured that I never lacked anything. He gave me everything I needed, but it didn't move me. I wanted more. Dave wasn't a romantic, but he made sure we had dinner dates every Friday. I dreaded Friday nights because of the dinner date. The reason was that I did not want to be seen with Dave outside. I've always felt ashamed any time we went outside together. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get myself to love Dave. I felt completely alone in the marriage. My loneliness drove me to begin having an affair. Just a year after our wedding, I began having an affair with Tom. Is the complete opposite of Dave. Tom is tall, adorable and loving. Tom had everything I wanted in a man, except that he wasn't as wealthy as Dave. Tom was unemployed. I even paid most of his bills. I fell in love with Tom the moment I met him. It was love at first sight. Tom has an irresistible charm that I can't describe. My affair with Tom lasted several years. Tom would constantly beg me to leave my husband for him. Initially I believed it was impossible, but soon I began to reflect on everything and realized that life was too short for me to spend it in a loveless marriage. So I began plotting my exit strategy from the marriage. I began saving money in Tom's account while remaining discreet, because I knew Dave would never forgive me if he discovered I was cheating on him. Tom was a complete lover boy. He always knew how to make me smile. I have glowed differently since I began dating Tom because it appeared that I had finally found my soulmate. Even though Tom wasn't wealthy, he made sure to spend what little he had on me. Time passes so quickly anytime we are together. Sometimes I wish time would still. Tom and I had so much in common. We shared the same perspective on life. I wish I had met Tom before I met Dave. Perhaps things would have gone differently. Dave is a realtor, so he was rarely around. He was always on a trip, so I had plenty of time to meet with my lover Tom. When Dave is away, He occasionally visits the house. Everything was going well until one day when Dave showed up unexpectedly. I bet our nosy neighbors ticked him off. So Dave showed up unexpectedly in the middle of the night. On that fateful day, on the fateful night Tom was around, I heard the doorbell ring. I was surprised because I didn't expect anyone. I decided to go looking low, and behold, my husband was standing outside at the front door. I froze for a few seconds. I really thought I was dreaming. Dave pushed me aside and ran upstairs. At that point I realized everything was real. Dave rushed up and into our bedroom. Fortunately for me, Tom had left the room and hidden himself in the kitchen, while Dave dashed up to our bedroom. Tom dashed out of the kitchen and into the living room, exiting the building immediately. Here's the thing. Tom and I had joked about this scenario numerous times. In fact, we had decided what we would do in such a situation. Tom and I had come down from the bedroom, and while I was checking who was at the door, he went to hide in the kitchen, which was the last place anyone would go when they came to visit. So while Dave rushed upstairs, I opened the door wide for Tom to run out. That's how I evaded being caught on a fateful day. Dave, on the other hand, felt foolish when he came into our bedroom and saw no one. His spirit immediately weakened as he ran up like he was about to catch a thief, only to be disappointed when he encountered an empty room. Dave took his time getting from one room to another. He checked every room. The search included the kitchen and bathroom. When he finished, I calmly asked why he was turning the house upside down, and if he had misplaced anything. He suddenly became dumb. He could not hear a single word. At that point it occurred to me that Dave suspected me, and that someone must have informed him about my affair with Tom. I took advantage of the opportunity and decided to turn things around. I burst into tears, accusing Dave of not trusting me. I called him a variety of names. I told him he was insecure and was trying to project his insecurities onto me. Dave apologized for his actions. He apologized and promised to trust me moving forward. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't believe any of my lies, because I knew him so well. At that point I felt sorry for him. Dave was a decent man who did not deserve what I was doing to him. After that experience, I made the decision to end my relationship with Tom and focus on making my marriage work. I stopped contacting Tom during that time, but Dave went on another business trip and I ended up reconnecting with him. This time I decided to be extremely discreet. I stopped Tom from coming over to my place. Instead, I would go to his place. Tom, on the other hand, was pressuring me to divorce Dave and take half of his property so that we could be together permanently. To be honest, the thought of divorcing Dave scares me. I'm not sure if it's because I know I won't get a penny after all Dave and I signed a prenup before our wedding, or because things might not work out between me and Tom. If he finds out I'm broke and only leaving my husband's money. Tom asked me to choose between himself and Dave. He told me that if I truly loved him like I claimed, I would divorce Dave. Tom is unaware that I could lose everything after the divorce. I haven't told Tom that Dave and I signed a prenup wall agreement before our wedding. I don't think he'd react well if he found out I do not want to lose Tom. On the other hand, I don't want to give up my comfort and all the luxury I enjoyed by divorcing Dave. I'm currently experiencing a fiasco. I need some advice. Guys, what do you all think I should do? Should I divorce Dave and move on to Tom? Or should I end my relationship with Tom and focus on fixing my marriage? I would be in the comments section, so please be polite. Update. Hey Reddit. I'm back, so I read your comments. But I decided to go with my heart. I decided to divorce my husband so that I could move on with my lover. So one fateful day after Dave returned from one of his trips, I told him, "Dear, I don't love you anymore and I want a divorce." To my great surprise, Dave did not say a word. He simply smirked and went about his day as if nothing had happened. I spent the next while trying to figure out what was on Dave's mind and why he was so quiet, even though I told him I no longer loved him and wanted a divorce. Dave's lawyer arrived and slammed me with divorce paperwork. I was taken aback when I saw him that morning, because we had not anticipated his arrival and Dave made no mention of his lawyer's visit. When he handed me the divorce papers, I asked what they were for and he told me to open them and see for myself. I hurriedly opened the paper and, to my surprise, it contained divorce papers. I was shocked to my core. I could not believe my eyes. I suddenly became dumb. I had so many things to say, but I couldn't say anything. Dave soon arrived. He'd gone out very early that morning. He immediately stepped in. He began throwing my belongings out. At that point it dawned on me that this was no joke. I grabbed Dave and started pleading. I told him I didn't mean what I said about divorcing him and was just joking. At that point he began talking. He told me that he had been suspecting me for a long time and was just waiting for the right opportunity to send me out. He reminded me of the day he arrived unannounced. He told me that a neighbor and friend had told him that I usually invite one particular guy over to the house when he wasn't present. He told me how he pretended to go on a trip just to stay in a hotel and how, on that particular day, the neighbor had called him to inform him my guest had arrived, which is why he stormed the house without warning. He informed me that while I did not catch the stupid guy red-handed, there were indications that I had a visitor. He told me how he discovered 2 glasses of wine in the bedroom and cheap male underwear that was not his. In the bathroom. He told me that he had always known I was cheating on him, that he was meticulously planning his revenge. He also told me that he installed a CCTV camera in the house and has numerous unclothed videos of me and Tom. At this point, my mouth was wide open. I fell to my knees and begged for mercy, but he pushed me away and continued to throw my belongings out. I honestly had no idea. Dave was aware that I had been cheating on him, but I decided to keep quiet. I was perplexed. I honestly had no idea everything would generate to this level. I expected Dave to be devastated, crying and begging me not to leave him. I had no idea he'd been planning how to divorce me for a long time. I told Dave I was not going to divorce him, but he threatened to release all his unclaimed videos of me and Tom on social media. Desperate to protect what remained of my dignity, I've decided to sign the divorce papers. After we signed the divorce papers, Dave promised to make my life hell. He asked me to watch and see how he would ruin my life. I collected my belongings and left for my parents' house. They were surprised to see me because I had not informed them that I was coming. I told them everything that had happened, and to say my parents were disappointed in me was an understatement. The expression on their faces says it all. I didn't need a soothsayer to tell me that my parents wanted to disown me at that moment. They called me every name you can think of, and they asked me to go back and beg Dave's forgiveness. I told them there was no need and I didn't even love him. I told my parents I was in love with someone else, and maybe divorcing Dave isn't so bad after all. At that point, my father lost control and slapped me. He said he would never approve of me marrying a Real-ife who cannot even feed himself. My parents told me to pack my bags and that they would take me back to Dave to plead on my behalf. I became enraged by my parents' insistence that I return to Dave and exchanging angry words with them. I explained that it was their greed that pushed me to marry someone I didn't love. I told them I would have been fine if they hadn't forced me to marry Dave for their own selfish reasons. I told them I wasn't going back and walked out. The next day Dave arrived at my parents' house. I assumed he came to beg me to return to him and that he realized he couldn't live without me. Unfortunately, Dave had a different mission. I forgot to tell you that Dave was the one who bought the house my parents lived in after our wedding. Dave gave my parents a house on that day. He arrived with security and instructed my parents to leave the house immediately. Everyone was shocked. Before we could say anything, the security guard had started throwing my parents' belongings. My parents came into the house with only their clothes because Dave furnished the house before giving it to my parents. What broke my heart was when my parents begged Dave to forgive me and let them stay in the house. But all of their pleas were not answered. Deaf ears. Dave ignored my parents and continued to commit his evil act. I had no idea the man I married was capable of such dubious character. I thought Dave was both an angel and a human. I had no idea he was the devil incarnate. Only a devil would be so heartless as to chase middle-aged people out of their homes he'd given them for the first time. Seeing my parents cry broke my heart. I felt helpless. I never imagined a day like this would come. But given that the house receipt was in Dave's name, I'm sure he was always prepared for such a day. Thinking about it, everything makes sense, explaining why Dave refused to give me or my parents the house receipt. Then it dawned on me that I hadn't married him. After all, he was consistently one step ahead of me. Yes, I was before. I joined my parents and siblings in pleading with Dave for forgiveness. But Dave acted as if we didn't exist and kept giving orders for our belongings to be thrown away, with no sign of Dave tempering justice with mercy. My parents and I gathered our belongings and returned to our old house. I felt bad for my parents because they had been living in a beautiful apartment and were now returning to their leaky house. At this point, I realized that I had let my parents down. The divorce proceedings soon began, and they were not as I had anticipated. The procedure was mentally exhausting for me. Worst of all, Dave made sure to frustrate me. He took everything he ever bought for me, including the engagement and wedding rings I was hoping to sell, and used the money to start something. My shameless husband took everything. The entire situation revealed who Dave was. It revealed his true colors, and that type of man hides a monster. As time passed, it became clear that Dave was on a mission to frustrate me. We had a joint savings account. Dave cleared everything. I was left with nothing to update. Hey Reddit, I'm back to update my story. I didn't expect it to get so much attention, and I never thought I'd post an update. But given how invested everyone is, I think it's best to let you all know what's been happening soon. The divorce proceedings were completed, and I thought I was finally free of Dave's torture, but I was mistaken. Dave continued to post photos of me naked on social media. A few days after our divorce, I went through another hell. For several days I couldn't go outside. I felt ashamed of myself. 3 months later, I calmed down. I decided to return to Tom so we could continue our relationship. But to my surprise, the four informed me that he was no longer interested and had moved on. He told me that he now has a serious girlfriend. He intended to settle down with me. I thought he was pulling my leg at first, but I soon realized he was serious. When a lady arrived, Tom sternly asked me to leave his house. He introduced me to her as his cousin. When I asked him about the money I was saving in his account, he explained that he needed it for an emergency and used it. At that point I nearly passed out, because that was my last hope. I told Tom I wouldn't leave his house until he gave me every penny I had saved in his account. He threatened to call the cops if I didn't leave at the time. I wanted to make a scene, but I didn't want to get into any more trouble, because I already had a lot on my plate. Just as I was about to leave, Tom's girlfriend came out and told me that he and Tom had been dating for years. She said Tom only used me to get some money. At that point I began crying. I felt used and trashed. I went home that day lost and hopeless. I couldn't think clearly, and I wasn't sure what to do. I felt betrayed by the person I loved and risked everything. For at that point it was as if the scale tails had fallen from my eyes. I began to regret everything. I felt bad for myself and, more importantly, my parents. If I could turn back time, trust me, I would have done things differently if I had learned to love my husband. Perhaps I would still be married today, but I allowed my lust to destroy my home. After giving everything careful thought, I realized I had wronged Dave, so I went to see him and apologized for the pain I had caused him. I arrived at the house and met new people. When I inquired about what was going on, they informed me that they were the new owners of the house. Apparently Dave had sold the house. I was informed by security that Dave had relocated to another city. I tried to obtain his new contact information, but no one was willing to provide it to me. I called his other number several times but received no response. I decided to go to his parents' house so that they could at least give me his new contact information and, if possible, assist me in pleading with him to forgive me and possibly accept me back. But nothing prepared me for the embarrassment Dave's mother caused me. First and foremost, she refused to allow me to enter. She came out and began hurling insults at me. She even called me a gold digger and blamed me for ruining her son's life. She told me that she had always disliked me and had reservations about me. She categorically stated that she was happy. Dave followed her advice about signing a prenuptial agreement before our wedding. She expressed her relief that I was now back in the slum where I belonged. I was astounded by everything she said. I apologized and asked her to please forgive me and give me Dave's contact information. She said it would never happen, and it would be over her dead body. When I saw how determined Dave's mother was to embarrass me, I hurriedly left the area to avoid an altercation, but I was still determined to speak with Dave. The next day I met with Dave's childhood friend and begged him to assist me with Dave's new contact. He was initially flatly refused, but after much persuasion from me, he gave me Dave's new contact information and address in Los Angeles. After calling Dave several times without receiving a response, I decided to go see him in Los Angeles. I drove from California to Los Angeles. I realize it sounds crazy, but I was desperate. Something told me Dave would forgive and we could start over. When I finally apologized for having wronged him, I arrived at the house and was shocked. I knew Dave was wealthy, but purchasing a home in a gated community took it to a whole new level. I rang the doorbell and a lady opened it for me. When I asked who she was, she introduced herself as Dave's girlfriend. Just as we were still talking, Dave arrived. If looks could kill, I would have died long ago. He was fuming and boiling with rage. When he saw me, he asked me how I got his home address, and just as I was about to respond, he pushed me out of his house. He warned me not to spam his phone with calls and messages, and that he had moved on. I told him I just wanted to apologize for how things ended between us. At that point, he looked me in the face and told me he would never forgive me and that I should leave. I felt humiliated. I left with my head bowed to the ground. I cried hot tears on my way home that day. I could not believe how quickly Dave moved on. I mean, it was only 6 months after our divorce and he already had a woman living with him. Worst of all, the woman was pregnant. Maybe I was mistaken about everything. Maybe Dave never truly loved me, as he claimed, because if he had, he would not have moved so quickly. Honestly, I felt betrayed. This is my story, guys. Everything still seems like a dream and I hope to wake up from this terrible nightmare one day. Here's the next story. I stood at the edge of our backyard admiring the Dallas skyline as the sun set. The glass of whiskey in my hand caught the fading light, reminding me of the many toasts Rebecca and I had shared over the years, 10 years of marriage, a lovely home and a successful career as an architect. By all accounts, I was living my dream. Alex, are you out here? Rebecca's voice came from the patio doors. I turned to find my wife framed in the doorway. Her silhouette is backlit by the warm light from our kitchen, simply enjoying the view. I called back, raised my glass. Rebecca stepped on the patio, her heels clicking against the stone. She joined me by the railing. Her perfume provided a familiar comfort. It never grows old, does it? She pondered, gazing out at the city. Neither do you, I replied. By wrapping an arm around her waist, she leaned into me and everything felt perfect. Charmer. Rebecca laughed playfully and swatted my chest. Don't forget the Hendersons' party on Saturday. I grunted inwardly. Another social gathering where we can play the role of the ideal couple. Right. I wouldn't want to miss that. I tried not to sound sarcastic. Rebecca backed away slightly, her brow furrowing. What is that supposed to mean? I shook my head and forced a smile. Nothing, just tired from work. The new projects had been kicking my ass. Rebecca said, her voice in that tone she used when she wasn't paying attention. Speaking of which, I need to finish up some paperwork for a listing. Do not wait. Okay. I watched her retreat into the house. Her attention is already focused on her phone. It wasn't the first time I'd noticed her increasing distraction, but I pushed it aside. We were happy, right? The next morning I found myself in my office staring at blueprints without actually seeing them. My secretary, Sophia, knocked on the door frame. Mr. Mitchell, your 10 is here. She announced. Her efficiency was in sharp contrast to my distracted state. I nodded in gratitude for the interruption. Thank you, Sophia. Send them in. As I greeted my client, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong at home. But I immersed myself in work, determined to concentrate on what I could control. Later that evening, I returned home to find Rebecca rushing out the door, dressed to the nines. Oh, Alex, I didn't expect you to be home so early, she replied, surprised. I glanced at my watch. It's past 7. Where are you going? Book club. Remember what I told you last week? Rebecca replied, not quite meeting my gaze right. Book club. I echoed, trying to remember when she had mentioned it. What are you reading now? Rebecca hesitated for a fraction of a second. Oh, just some bestsellers. There's nothing that would interest you. I've got to go. I don't want to be late. Before I could respond, she had left, leaving me standing in our entryway feeling as if I had missed something important. I wandered into the kitchen, opening the fridge out of habit rather than hunger. A note on the counter caught my attention. Dinner is in the oven. Love you. The gesture should have warmed my heart, but it only left me feeling hollow when simple acts of love began to feel like an allocation. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts to find Lucas's number. If anyone could help me make sense of this unease, it was my best friend. Hey Alex, what's up? Lucas. His voice resonated through the speaker. Lucas, are you free for a drink? I inquired already, having the answer for you. Always the usual spot is in the top 20. I agreed. I was grateful for the escape. As I drove to our favorite bar, I couldn't get over the feeling that my perfect life was beginning to show cracks. But maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, what had I to complain about? Little did I know that night would mark the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my wife and the life we had created together. The low hum of conversation filled the bar, as I nursed my second whiskey while waiting for Lucas to arrive. The familiar scent of polished wood and stale beer did little to soothe my nerves. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with Rebecca. Don't you look like a ray of sunshine, Lucas? His voice cut through my thoughts as he slid onto the bar stool beside me. I managed a weak smile. Thank you for coming, Lucas. He signaled to the bartender for a beer before turning to face me. Okay, spill it. What makes you look like someone stole your favorite drafting pencil? I chuckled despite myself, leaving it to Lucas to lighten the atmosphere. It's Rebecca, I admitted, while swirling the amber liquid in my glass. Lucas's eyebrows rose. Trouble in paradise. I do not know. I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but something seems off. Take off hello. Lucas' breast instincts kicking in. I took a sip of whiskey and let the burn ground me. She's been distant recently, secretive, and these book clubs meet every Thursday night. I can't remember the last time she mentioned a book she read. Lucas leaned back with a thoughtful expression. Have you tried speaking with her about it? That's it, I said. Frustration seeped into my voice. Each time I try, she dismisses it or changes the subject. It's as if she doesn't know avoiding me. Do you think she is hiding something? Lucas inquired in a questioning tone. Careful. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications I wanted to deny. It's ridiculous to laugh off the situation. However, The nagging doubt in my gut would not let me. I don't want to think about that, I said quietly, but I can't shake the feeling that there's more to what she's saying. Lucas nodded slowly and took a sip of his beer. Okay. Let on. Not jump to conclusions. What has changed? I leaned forward and lowered my voice. It's the small details. You know. She tended to leave her phone lying around. She now keeps it in her hand or pocket at all times. She's working late more frequently. But when I inquire about her deals, she's vague. And these book club meetings appear to have never existed before. A few months back, have you ever shown up to one of these meetings? Lucas asked. I shake my head. No, I didn't want to come across as if I was checking on her. That's not right. That isn't who we are. Well, I suppose Lucas remained quiet for a moment. Is the detective's mind clearly functioning? Look, Alex, I hate to say it, but as your friend and someone who has seen this type of thing before, it may be worth investigating. My stomach dropped. Do you think she is cheating? I'm not saying Lucas backed down quickly, but if something is going on, you deserve to know the truth for your own peace of mind. If nothing else, I drank the last of my whiskey. The alcohol did little to relieve the ache in my chest, so what are your suggestions? Lucas appeared uncomfortable but determined. If you really want to know, I could do some research, of course discreetly, in order to rule out any possibilities. The thought of investigating my own wife made me sick to my stomach, but there's an alternative. Living with the growing suspicion and doubt seemed even worse. Okay, I finally replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Do it. But Lucas, what if this turns out to be nothing? He clasped my shoulder firm and reassuring. Then we'll laugh about it over a beer and you'll go home and hug your wife. However, if this is the case, you must also be prepared. I nodded, unable to speak through the lump in my throat as we silenced. I couldn't help but wonder how my seemingly perfect life had led to this point. The next few days were a blur of forced normality and underlying tension. I found myself watching Rebecca more closely, analyzing every word and gesture. It was exhausting and I hated myself for it. Thursday evening arrived, bringing with it another book club meeting. I sat at the dining room table pretending to work on blueprints while Rebecca got ready. Honey, don't wait up, she called while applying the final coat of lipstick in the hallway mirror. These discussions can occasionally run late. I looked up admiring her carefully styled hair and the dress, which appeared a little too fancy for a casual book club. You look nice, I said, aiming for a casual special occasion. Rebecca's smile faltered briefly. Oh no, I just felt like dressing up a little. You know how Susan always overdoing it. I nodded as if I knew anything about Susan or the other members of the mysterious book club. Have fun. As the door closed behind her, the words tasted bitter on my tongue. I was on my feet pacing the living room, and the desire to follow her to see where she was actually going was almost overwhelming. But Lucas's words echoed in my mind. Let me handle it. If you rush in, you may miss something important. Instead, I found myself in our home office, going through Rebecca's desk drawers. I felt dirty and invasive, but I could not stop. I needed to find something, anything to either confirm or dismiss my suspicions, which were buried in the bottom drawer. Beneath a stack of old magazines, I found a small leather-brown notebook. My hands shook as I opened it, half expecting to read a detailed account of an affair. Instead, I discovered a list of names and numbers, along with notes on property values and investment opportunities. Nothing incriminating, but nothing to explain her secrecy either. I was about to put it back when a business card fell from between the pages. Nathaniel C. is a real estate mogul. It reads with a handwritten note on the back. Thursday, 8 p.m. Ritz-Carlton. My blood became cold. This was not a book club. This was what a business meeting. A rendezvous. I slumped into the desk chair, clutching the business card in my hand. The perfect life I thought I had was crumbling around me, and I didn't know how to stop it. As I sat there staring at the damning evidence in my hand, I reached a decision. I'd follow Rebecca next Thursday. I needed to see for myself what was happening, because if I did not, doubt and suspicion would eat me alive. Little did I know the truth would be far more devastating than I could have imagined. The following Thursday arrived with an oppressive weight of expectation. All week I'd gone through the motions of normally eating with Rebecca, talking about work and even making plans for the weekend. But beneath it all, a current of tension flows, threatening to drag me under. As the evening approached, I observed Rebecca preparing for her book club. With a detached sense of unreality, she hummed softly while applying her makeup, seemingly unaware of my inner turmoil. "You are home early," she commented, catching my gaze in the mirror. I shrugged. "I'm aiming for a casual, slow day at work. I thought I'd get some work done here." Rebecca nodded, her focus already shifting. "So don't work too hard. I might be late, so don't wait." "Right about the book club," I said, unable to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. She paused and turned to face me with a slight frown. "Is everything all right, Alex? You've been absent lately." For a moment, I considered confronting her and demanding the truth, but Lucas's words echoed in my head. "You require concrete evidence, Alex. Accusations without proof will only make matters worse." I forced a smile. I'm hating myself for the deception. I'm just stressed about work. "Go have fun with your friends." Rebecca appeared to accept this. She leaned in to give me a quick kiss on the cheek before leaving. As soon as the door closed behind her, I sprung into action. I grabbed my keys and jacket, my heart racing as I slipped out to my car. The rain had created a fine mist, which seemed appropriate for the night's covert operations. I waited until Rebecca's car had turned the corner before pulling out, maintain a safe distance. As I followed her through the streets of Dallas, my suspicions grew as we moved away from our usual haunts and closer to downtown. My stomach dropped as Rebecca's car pulled into the Ritz-Carlton's valet parking. This was not a book club. I parked across the street. My hands shook as I turned off the engine. For a long time I sat there. The rain is pattering on the roof. I am debating my next move. Part of me wanted to drive away to pretend I hadn't seen this. However, I knew I couldn't. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it may hurt stealing myself. I got out of the car and made my way to the hotel's main entrance. The lobby was a hub of activity, with guests and staff moving about with purpose. I scanned the crowd for any signs of. Rebecca was partially hidden behind a large decorative pillar near the elevators. When I noticed her, she wasn't alone at all. A handsome man wrapped his arms around her, their bodies pressed together in a distinctly intimate embrace. Even at this distance, I could see the passion in their kiss, the familiarity of their touch. My world tipped dances. Everything I thought, I knew and believed about my marriage shattered in that moment. I stumbled forwards. My body moves at its own accord. "Rebecca." My voice sounded strange and distant, like someone else was speaking. They split apart. Rebecca's face drained of sea as she saw me, her eyes wide with surprise and guilt. "Alex," she gasped. "Where are you?" I could explain. The man beside her, whom I now recognized as Nathaniel Hart from his business card, had the audacity to appear annoyed at the interruption. "Explain?" I repeated, my tone rising. "Explain how you have lied to me. You've been sneaking around behind my back." People started staring, but I couldn't care. 10 years of marriage full of trust and love had just gone up in smoke cold. "Please," Rebecca pleaded and reached out to me. "It's not as you think." I jerked away from her touch as if it was burning. "Not what I think, Rebecca. I'm not an idiot. I see exactly what this is." Nathaniel stepped forward, his face a mix of arrogance and false sympathy. "Now, Mr. Mitchell, let us not make a scene. Why don't we talk about this like adults? Something in me snapped. Before I realized what I was doing, my fist struck Nathaniel's jaw, sending him stumbling back. Alex. Rebecca screamed and rushed to Nathaniel's side. Security guards appeared and moved to restrain me. I shrugged them off. My gaze was fixed on Rebecca. Do not come home. I spat, my voice shaking from rage and pain. I do not want to see you. I do not want to hear your excuses. It is over, Rebecca. We're finished with that. I turned and walked out of the hotel, leaving the devastation of my marriage and the life I thought I had. As I returned to my car, the rain had intensified, soaking through my clothes. I sat behind the steering wheel, my hands gripping it so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in, bringing with it a flood of emotions so intense that I could hardly breathe. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak. They all merged into a maelstrom of pain. How could she accomplish this? How long had this been going on? The questions were pounding in my head, each one as a fresh wound. I'm not sure how long. I sat there before my phone buzzed. I could hear rain drumming on my car roof. Lucas's name flashed across the screen. Alex. Where are you? Man, I have been trying to reach you. I swallowed hard and spoke in a rough voice. I followed her, Lucas, to the Ritz-Carlton. There was a pause. What happened? It is true. All of it. I saw her with him, Nathaniel C., the sleazy real estate mogul. Alex. I'm deeply sorry. Where are you currently? Still in the parking lot. I can't go home. Stay put. I'm coming to get you. 20 minutes later. Lucas. His car pulled up next to mine. He came out, umbrella in hand, and opened my passenger door. Come on, buddy. Let us get you out of here. I let him lead me to his car. We felt numb as we drove through the rain-slicked streets. Lucas kept glancing at me, want to discuss it. I shook my head and changed my mind. She did not even deny it. Lucas. She just stood there looking guilty and hurt. I struck him. Lucas let out a low whistle. I cannot say I blame you. What are you planning to do now? I do not know. I told her not to come home. God, Lucas. Lucas. What should I do? He was silent for a moment. First you'll stay at my house tonight. Then tomorrow we'll start figuring this out. Take one step at a time. Okay. I nodded. I'm grateful for his steady presence. As we drove away from the city lights, I felt like I was leaving more than just the scene of my marriage's dissolution behind. I was leaving behind the life I believed I had. The future I had planned for tomorrow would involve difficult decisions and painful conversations. But for tonight, I let the hum of the car engine and the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers transport me to a state of empty numbness. It was preferable to feeling the full impact of my shattered world. I awoke on Lucas's sofa, disoriented and with a pounding headache. For a blissful moment, I forgot why I was there. Then everything came crashing back. Good morning, sunshine. Lucas called from the kitchen. Coffee is ready. I groaned and sat up. Have you got anything stronger? Lucas appeared with the steaming mugs in hand. It's 9 a.m. Alex. Let us start with caffeine. I took the mug and inhaled its rich aroma. Thank you for everything. Don't mention it. So what is the game plan? I sighed and ran a hand through my hair. I need to speak with a lawyer. Lucas nodded. I have a guy. Theodore Grant is the best divorce attorney in Dallas. Divorce. I echoed. The word tastes bitter. Never thought I'd say that life is full of surprises. Lucas spoke dryly. Do you want me to set up a meeting? I nodded, my thoughts already racing. Yeah. And Lucas, I need you to do some research on Nathaniel C. Lucas's eyebrows rose. Are you sure about that? Absolutely. If he's involved with my wife, I'd like to learn everything about him. Lucas hesitated. Alex, I get it. However, Seeking revenge will not make you feel better. I met his gaze. My jaw had set. This is not about feeling better. It is about justice. All right. Lucas sighed. I will see what I can find. But promise me not to do anything stupid. Define stupid. I muttered. You understand what I mean. No more punching millionaires in hotel lobbies. Despite everything, I managed a faint smile. No promises. 2 hours later we were seated in Theodore Grant's plush office. The attorney listened intently. As I described the events of the previous night, Theodore leaned back in his chair and said, "Well, Mr. Mitchell, the good news is that Texas is a fort-based divorce state. Infidelity can have a significant impact on the settlement process, and the bad news," I asked, "proving it can be challenging. Your word against hers will not suffice." Lucas cleared his throat. "That is where I come in. I am the pie. We can collect evidence." Theodore nodded in approval. "Excellent. Hello, Mr. Mitchell. Do you and your wife have a prenup?" I frowned, thinking back. "Yes, we do. There is an infidelity clause." Theodore's eyes lit up. "That changes everything. If we can prove the affair, it may invalidate her right to spousal support and split your assets in your favor." "So what are our next steps?" I inquired, feeling a spark of hope. For the first time since last night, first we file for divorce. Then we begin building our case. Mr. Langston, any information you can gather about the situation will be critical." Lucas nodded. "I am on it." As we left Theodore's office, I felt a renewed sense of determination. "Lucas, I need you to look into CUN's business dealings as well. Something about him doesn't seem right." Lucas gave me a concerned expression. "Alex, are you certain you want to go down this road?" I stopped, turning to face him. "Lucas, she did not simply betray our marriage. She betrayed everything we had built together. If she is involved in anything shady, I'd like to know." Lucas sighed. "All right. I'll see what I can dig up. But Alex, take care. Men like C play dirty." "So," I muttered, already planning my next move. My phone stopped working. As we walked to the car, Rebecca's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated and then declined the call. "You cannot avoid her indefinitely." Lucas spoke gently. I know I said my voice harsh. However, for the time being, I must prioritize my own safety. She made her decision. Now I'm making mine. As we drove away, I couldn't help but feel a combination of determination and dread. The life I knew had ended, but a new battle had just begun, and this time I was determined to win. 1 week had passed since that fateful night at the Ritz-Carlton. I'd thrown myself into work, working long hours at the office to avoid returning home to an empty house. However, today I had a different mission. I sat across from Evelyn Thompson, my financial advisor, in her modern downtown office. She pushed her glasses up her nose, frowning at the document spread out before us. "Alex, are you certain about this?" Evelyn inquired, her tone cautious. I nodded. My jaw had set. "Absolutely." "What did you find?" Evelyn sighed and tapped a stack of papers. "According to the information provided by your friend, Mr. Keynes, real estate ventures appear to be less than clean." "Go on," I urged, leaning forward. "There are discrepancies in his financial reports. Large sums of money moving through shell companies and properties sold at suspiciously high prices. Everything points to money laundering." I finished with a grim smile on my face. Evelyn nodded. "It appears that way. But, Alex, this is dangerous territory if Hart is involved in illegal activities." I raised a hand. "Evelyn, I understand the risks, but I need to know everything. Can you continue digging?" She hesitated and then nodded. "I'll do what I can, but please be cautious." My phone broke as I was leaving Evelyn's office. It was Lucas. "Hey, got a minute?" he asked when I picked you up. "Always. What up?" I've got some interesting information about our friend Hart. Can you meet me at the usual location? 20 minutes later, I slid into the booth across from Lucas at our favorite diner. The waitress recognized us and brought over to see coffees without being asked. All right. Spill it. I said. Max leaned in after she had moved out of earshot. His voice was low, so I'd been looking into Can's business dealings. Alex, this guy's up to something shady. I nodded. Evelyn discovered financial irregularities. It looks like money laundering. It is worse than that. Lucas explained, sliding a folder across the table. He has been bribing city officials to advance his development projects, and get this. Some of these projects violate safety regulation. I flipped through the documents. My rage intensifies with each page. Lucas, this is big. We have to take him down. Lucas gave me a wary expression. Alex, I understand you are hurt, but this is dangerous territory. See his connections if we aren't careful. I realize I cut him off. Think about it, Max. If we can expose him, we will not only bring down the bastard who is sleeping with my wife, but we will also prevent him from endangering people with his shoddy buildings. Lucas sighed and ran a hand through his hair. All right. What is your plan? I leaned back, forming a plan in my mind. We set up a sting. Use my architectural connections to feed him misinformation about a lucrative development project, something to good us up. Then Lucas prompted we catch him in the act and collect evidence of his attempts to bribe. Officials cut enough corners to bury him. Lucas whistled softly. Alex, that is one hell of a plan, but it is risky. If Hart catches on, he will not. I replied firmly. I'll make sure of that. Are you with me? Lucas held my gaze for a while before nodding. Always, buddy. But we do it smartly. Okay, anything. There are no unnecessary risks. I reached across the table and clasped his shoulder. Thank you, Lucas. I can't do this without you. I felt a surge of energy as we left the diner. For the first time since learning of Rebecca's betrayal, I had a purpose. He believed he could take everything from me. He was about to realize that he had chosen the wrong man to cross. Little did I know that the game I was about to play would be more dangerous than I could have anticipated. My plan was coming together. Over the last few weeks I had carefully laid the groundwork for Hart's demise. Now it was time for the final act. I stood in our living room, my heart racing as I heard Rebecca's key into the lock. We had not spoken much since that night at the Ritz, communicating primarily through text messages, and lawyers returned home a day after the hotel incident. I didn't make a fuss, but tonight things would change. Rebecca walked in and froze. When she saw me, Alex, I met her gaze, my voice steady. We need to talk. She set down her purse with caution in her eyes. What is this about? What about your affair? I spoke bluntly. What about Nathaniel K's illegal activities? Rebecca's face turned pale. What exactly are you talking about? I picked up a folder from the coffee table and tossed it onto the couch between us. Take a look. Rebecca shook her hands and opened the folder. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pictures. Lucas's surveillance cameras. Evelyn uncovered financial records. How did you get them? She whispered. Does it matter? I counted. What matters is what they present. Rebecca, you've been lying to me for how long? Rebecca sank onto the sofa. Her composure was slipping away. Alex, please. I apologize. My voice rises. You've been sneaking around with a man who is not only ruining our marriage but also endangering people's lives throughout business practices. I did not know. Rebecca protested passively about his business. I swear to you, Alex, I had no idea. I laughed bitterly. And that makes things better. You betrayed our marriage for a man you barely knew. Rebecca's eyes welled up with tears. I apologize, Alex. I never intended to hurt you. But you did. I spoke in my own voice. Heart, and now you'll have to face the consequences. Rebecca's head snapped upward. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I had just filed for divorce. Given the infidelity clause in the prenuptial agreement and the evidence I have, you'll not receive much in the settlement. You can't do this. Rebecca gave a gasp. I replied, I can. And I know. One more thing, I have frozen our joint accounts. You will not have access until the proceedings are completed. Rebecca stood up, her shock giving way to anger. You bastard. Did you plan all of this? I met her gaze unwarrantably. You made your decision, Allison. Now I'm making mine. As Rebecca storms out, she slammed the door behind her. I sank onto the sofa. The weight of what I had just done struck me. It was finished. There was no turning back. Now my phone vibrated. Lucas's name flashed across the screen. It's finished, I said. When I responded, how did it go? Lucas asked. There was concern in his voice, about as well as one would expect. I exhaled. But it is over. We're now going to focus on Heart. Are you certain about this call? It is not too late to back out. I steel-led myself, pushing down any lingering doubts. I'm sure Lucas Ken is going down, and Rebecca, well, she made her bed. Now she can lie in it. As I hung up, I couldn't help but wonder if I had done the right thing. But then I remembered the agony of betrayal, the shock of learning the full extent of Heart's corruption. There was no turning back. Now the game was on. I planned to win. Little did I know that the real battle was just beginning. Heart refused to go down without a fight, and I was about to find out how far he would go to protect his empire. But I was prepared. Let him come. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. The morning sun shone through the blinds in my office as I reviewed the final pieces of evidence against Nathaniel Kane. Months of preparation, sleepless nights, and relentless pursuit had culminated. In this moment, a knock at the door interrupted. My thoughts come inside. I called out. Lucas entered with a thick file tucked under his arm. Morning, Alex. Are you ready for this? I nodded and motioned for him to take a seat. As prepared as I will ever be. What do you have? Lucas spread out the contents of the file on my desk. Everything we need to bring Kane down: financial documents, surveillance photos, and witness statements. It is all here. I leaned forward and scanned the documents. Are you sure this is enough? More than enough. Lucas reassured me. Detective Turner is eager to get our hands on this. Kane is going down, and he's going down hard. I sat back, a mix of emotions swirling through my chest. Let us do it, then make the call. Lucas pulled out his phone and dialed a number. Detective Turner, it's Lucas Langston. We are ready. An hour later, we sat in Detective Rachel Turner's office outlining our case against Nathaniel Hart. The seasoned detective's eyes widened as she leafed through the evidence. Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Langston, she said, looking up at us. This is impressive. How long have you worked on this? Too long, I responded, my voice tight. Is that enough? Detective Turner nodded slowly. More than enough. We will begin working on this right away. Mr. C will not know what hit him. We left the police station. Lucas clapped my shoulder. You did it. Alex, it's actually happening. I managed a small smile. We did it. I could not have done it without you. Lucas, what happens now? Lucas asked. As we approached my car, I checked my watch. Now we wait, hoping that justice will be served quickly. We did not have to wait long. The following morning, my phone vibrated with a news alert. I almost dropped it when I read the headline line. Nathaniel Hart, a real estate mogul, was arrested in a dawn raid. I called Lucas immediately. Do you see this? We're watching it live. Max responded with excitement in his voice, describing how the perp was currently walking him out of his mansion. It is all over the news. Alex. I turned on the television and watched as Nathaniel Hart, disheveled and handcuffed, was led to awaiting police. Car reporters crowded around him shouting questions. Mr. Hart, how do you respond to the allegations of money laundering and bribery? Is it true that you've been cutting corners on your development projects, putting lives in danger? Kane's arrogant demeanor had crumbled, replaced by a look of complete panic. As the car door slammed shut behind him, I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. My phone vibrated again. This time it was Sophia, my secretary. Mr. Mitchell, I think you should come into the office. The phones are constantly ringing with press inquiries. I sighed as reality set in. I will be right there. Sophia, thank you for the heads up. As I drove to work, my mind raced. Hart's arrest was only the beginning. The coming days would see a media frenzy, legal battles and, undoubtedly, confrontations with Rebecca. But for the first time in months I felt full justice was being served. Little did I know, the story wasn't over. As Hart's empire crumbled, new revelations would emerge, shaking everything I thought I knew about my marriage and the woman I had long loved. As I sat beside Theodore Grant, my divorce attorney, the courtroom was filled with tension. Rebecca crossed the aisle and avoided my gaze. Her once perfect appearance is now showing signs of strain. The previous few weeks had been a blur of depositions, media speculation, sleepless nights all rise. As soon as the judge entered the booth, called out. As we took our seats, Theodore leaned in and whispered, "Remember, I'll do the talking." "We've received this call." I nodded, my jaw clenched. The proceedings began in a blur of legal terminology and formalities. Theodore rose, his voice confident. "Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence of Mrs. Mitchell's infidelity which, according to the couple's prenuptial agreement, terminates her right to spousal support." Rebecca's lawyer, Sarah Donovan, a sharply dressed woman, jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor, was in the first. My client's personal indiscretions. Loans had no bearing on our right to an equitable distribution of assets." The judge looked over his glasses. "Infidelity has a significant impact on divorce in a fault-based state like Texas." Overruled. "Continue, Mr. Grant." Theodore nodded and took out a stack of documents. "Furthermore, Your Honor, in the countryside, we have evidence that links Mrs. Mitchell to Mr. Nathaniel Cahn's illegal business activities." A gasp echoed throughout the courtroom. I watched as Rebecca's face lost its color. "That is a lie," Rebecca burst out, her composure slipping. "I knew nothing about Nathaniel's business." The judge banged his gavel. "Mrs. Mitchell, control yourself or you will be held in contempt." Sarah Donovan leaned in, whispering urgently to Rebecca, who slumped back into her chair, defeated. Theodore presented our case. My mind wandered to happier times, family vacations, slow Sunday mornings, the day we brought our kids home from the hospital. How did we get from that to this? Mr. Mitchell. The judge's voice brought me back to reality. "Do you have anything to add?" I stood slowly, my gaze catching Rebecca's for the first time. "I never wanted this to happen, Your Honor. However, our marriage's trust has been irreparably broken. I'm fighting not only for myself, but also for our children, Emma and Oliver. They deserve consistency and honesty in their lives." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Alex, please," she whispered. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her suffering, regardless of how justified it was. The judge cleared his throat after reviewing all of the evidence and hearing testimony from both sides. "I'm ready to make my decision." The courtroom fell silent as he continued citing Mrs. Mitchell's infidelity and the prenuptial agreement. "I have decided in favor of Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell will be awarded the family home as well as primary custody of the children. Mrs. Mitchell will receive minimal alimony as specified in the prenuptial agreement. The sound of the GAVL echoed throughout the room, signaling the end of my marriage. As people started filing out, I remained seated. The weight of the moment is sinking in. Theodore patted my shoulder. Congratulations, Alex. It is over. I nodded numbly. Thank you, Theodore, for everything. As I stood to leave, I noticed Rebecca being consoled by her attorney. Our gazes met one last time. A decade's worth of memories passed between us in a single glance. Then she turned away and I realized it was truly over. Outside the courthouse, reporters demanded a statement. I pushed past them seeking solitude in my car as I slumped into the driver's seat. My phone broken. Max sent a text. Heard the news. You okay, drinks? Later I typed a quick reply. Yeah, I could use a drink. The usual location is at 800. As I drove home to a house that was now all mine, I couldn't shake the feeling that one chapter had ended, another was just beginning. The divorce was finalized, but the story of my life after Rebecca had yet to be written. Months had passed since the divorce and life had settled into its new rhythm. The media frenzy had subsided. Nathaniel Cahn's trial was underway, and I was gradually learning to navigate life as a single father. I sat at my desk reviewing the plans for a new sustainable housing project. Sophia knocked on my office door. Mr. Yortu is here. I glanced at my watch. I was surprised how quickly the day had passed. Thank you, Sophia. Send them in. As my client entered, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This project, which arose from the ashes of my personal life, was intended to be my most ambitious. Yeah, I greeted Mr. Sean, extending my hand. Thank you for coming inside. I believe you will be pleased with the changes we've made. Sophia returned an hour later as Mr. Sean walked out with a signed contract. It was a successful meeting. I nodded, a genuine smile spread across my face. Very. We received approval for the environmentally friendly apartment complex. Sophia beams. That is fantastic. Alex. I mean Mr. Mitchell. Sorry. I brushed off her apology. Alex is fine. Sophia. We've been through enough together in the last few months. She paused for a moment. In that case, a few of us were considering getting drinks after work to celebrate the Anderson project's completion. Do you want to join us? I paused, considering in the past I would have declined to rush home to Rebecca and the children, but things were different. Now you know what, that sounded great. I will meet you all there. Sophia smiled wider. Wonderful. We'll meet you at All Miles at 6. As she turned to leave, I called out to Sophia, thank you for everything. I could not have gotten through the last few months without your help. Her cheeks showed a faint blush. I'm just doing my job. Alex, see you later. As the door closed behind her, I leaned back in my chair, thinking about how much had changed. The pain of Rebecca's betrayal persisted, but it no longer consumed me. I had immersed myself in my work, finding solace in creating beautiful, sustainable structures, and I was slowly rebuilding my personal life. My phone vibrated with a text from my daughter. Dad, can Oliver and I stay with Grandma this weekend? She wants to take us to Six Flags. I smiled and typed back quickly. Of course. Have fun and stay safe. Throughout the divorce, the children had served as my anchor. Their perseverance never ceases to amaze me. As I packed for the day, my gaze fell on a framed photo on my desk. It was recently taken at Oliver's baseball game. Lucas stood next to me, both of us cheering. As Oliver came around third base, Sophia had taken the photo, capturing a moment of pure joy. I picked up the frame and looked at the faces of those who had become my support system. Lucas, my oldest friend, who had supported me through the darkest times. Sophia's quiet strength and efficiency had kept me grounded in my children, whose love endured despite the upheaval in their lives. As I set out to meet my colleagues, I felt a surge of optimism that I hadn't felt in years. The future, once uncertain, now held promise. I had survived the betrayal, divorce, and media circus. I'd emerged stronger, wiser, and surprisingly happier. Little did I know. As I stepped out into the warm Dallas evening, I realized that the most profound revelation was yet to come. One that would shake the very foundations of the new life I was creating and force me to confront truths I had never imagined. But for the time being, I let myself enjoy the moment, savoring of progress, of new beginnings. Because sometimes from the ashes of betrayal something beautiful emerges. I was determined to create that beauty one day at a time. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like. And don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.